Good evening and welcome to the business consultation that we're holding tonight. Can I thank the BID for circulating details of this and impressing upon us the importance of us starting the engagement with businesses and for us to move forward together in a sort of positive way. Today you'll have with me is Joe Green, who's been the lead officer for bringing forward the low traffic neighbourhoods, and there's myself, Councillor Lisa Trickett, and we have colleagues Rebecca and E4 who are also part of this broader process. So I'll hand over to Joe to run through the slides now, and look forward to seeing some of your comments and challenges in the Q&A part. Thank you very much. Joe, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this briefing session. I'm Joe Green. I'm Travel Demand Manager with Birmingham City Council, and I've been overseeing the low traffic neighbourhood pilot project for Kings Heath. I'm going to sort of start off this evening giving a little bit of information to provide some context and background to what's happening, to go through the Kings Heath LTN pilot project and the phase 1 measures, to talk a little bit about some of the engagement and feedback to date, and then also what's happening now and next steps, and then hopefully at the end we'll have half an hour or so for any questions. If people do have any questions throughout the presentation, then you can type those into the meeting chat. There's a Q&A function, and we'll publish those. I've got colleagues with me who may be able to answer some of them during the presentation, and then if not, we'll come back to some of those at the end. But as I say, it was just really to sort of start off with a little bit of context and an overview of what's currently being brought forward. So I think a term that may have become more familiar to people over the last month or two is the concept of low traffic neighbourhoods. This is something we're looking to deliver across the city as part of our transport plan and vision strategy, and basically it's around trying to remove or discourage through traffic from local residential streets. So if you sort of think of Kings Heath, particularly some of the streets coming off from the High Street, or also between Vicarage Road and Howard Road, the way that it works is measures are put in that sort of restrict or prevent that through traffic, but residents are still able to drive onto their street, have visitors, get deliveries, etc., albeit sometimes by a different route. What we're also looking to do is reduce traffic across the area. This isn't just about moving current traffic onto different roads like the parallel or border roads or Kings Heath High Street itself. This is around trying to reduce traffic by encouraging different ways of getting around. And by doing this, we want to create an environment that's nicer for people to be outside. And the way we're delivering this in Birmingham is as part of our Places for People programme, alongside other things like work with schools, 20-mile-per-hour speed limits, etc. And this is around reclaiming local streets for walking, cycling, playing, socialising, and what we want to bring about is cleaner air, a safer environment for all, benefits for business, better for business in this sort of environment, by reducing the overall amount of traffic. Very briefly, the sort of policy context to this is something that Birmingham put sort of forward central in our draft Birmingham transport plan, published for consultation in January at the start of this year. Seems like a very long time ago now. This had 4 big moves, one of which was about prioritising active travel, walking and cycling within local neighbourhoods, trying to sort of create an environment where cars no longer dominate street life, and that residential neighbourhoods and local centres are places that prioritise people. This then got sort of almost accelerated through the emergency transport plan that we put together in response to the situation we found ourselves in earlier this year, based on the same vision and big moves within the transport plan, but looking at how we adapt some of those proposals to a very changing world, and that the need for safe space for walking and cycling, and also this phenomenon of social distancing that we're now all incredibly familiar with. A commitment was made in that emergency transport plan to deliver low traffic neighbourhoods in at least 2 areas, and Kings Heath has been selected as one of those 2, but also look at how this gets extended across the whole city as part of our transport plan. And then just to sort of emphasise that this isn't just something that Birmingham is doing in isolation. I mean, this is something that's been brought forward in a number of other areas, especially within some of the London boroughs, but also it's very clear within the Department for Transport's cycling and walking plan that they published a couple of months ago, around low traffic neighbourhoods can really help to improve local environments, still enable access, but really sort of look at reducing volume of traffic, and then the air pollution, noise pollution, and a lot of the negative elements that come with that. And to be fair to the Department for Transport, they've also put their money where their mouth is, and earlier this year announced a £2 billion package to support walking and cycling, and the first 250 million being made available to local authorities this year through the Emergency Active Travel Fund. The criteria for this has been quite clear in terms of we need to have swift, meaningful plans to reallocate road space and prioritise walking and cycling. That something like low traffic neighbourhoods is a key part of that, and one of the quickest and cheapest ways that we can respond to the challenge sort of set out through this. The Emergency Active Travel Fund is coming through to councils in 2 tranches. We're just coming to the end of tranche 1 now, and we're basically, although we're just creeping into October, I think we're sort of a week away from completing everything, and then hopefully a second tranche to be forthcoming, and details of that from the government very soon. In terms of some of the figures involved, Birmingham's receiving just over £1 million through the first tranche of funding. We're using that to deliver 14 schemes across the city, including some pop-up cycle lanes, some local centre schemes, some work in the city centre, and then also these 2 low traffic neighbourhood pilots, one of which is in Kings Heath, and some other measures including Moseley, and then looking to continue to sort of build on that through a second tranche of funding over the next few months. This has been a real sort of challenge for us in terms of the timescale that we've had to work to, as well as adapting to a new environment where a lot of restrictions are in place. We're limited in terms of what we can do in terms of public meetings, etc. And I will acknowledge that has limited the extent to which we've been able to communicate and engage at times. But there is a sort of genuine desire to do that as much as we can, and that's one of the reasons why we have this session now. But basically, we got the announcement of the funding in early July. We only actually received the offer letter on the 7th of July. Prior to that, we did a lot of work to sort of mobilise for the schemes that we'd included in our bid, and to line people up to do some of the technical work on that. Very quickly, we agreed the area that we'd sort of use for Kings Heath for the initial analysis, come up with some draft strategies and plans, go through our whole internal design review process, and then as soon as we had information to share, we made that available through the Commonplace website towards the end of July, also with and through Kings Heath bid. We then sort of used quite a lot of that feedback to review the initial proposals, to clarify exactly where we wanted to focus, and agree a design brief for our consultants to come up with proposals. They then sort of in the space of less than 2 weeks produced plans that again went through a whole review, and we announced details of phase 1 measures on the 18th of August, and then have sort of started on commencement of those works earlier this month. I'm sorry, actually earlier last month. It's October now, isn't it? The study area that we started off with was an area sort of centred around Kings Heath High Street, with a couple of other areas identified for future development work. through the first phase of engagement, we identified a couple of things. One, that we only had sufficient budget to go so far, so we needed to sort of reduce that area by half. And secondly, that there were some issues with particular locations to the east of the High Street, including Addison Road and Springfield Road. Residents on those roads had some concerns about the impact on them, so it needed to do a bit more exploration and development there. So we focused phase 1 on that area to the west of the High Street, which is labelled sort of areas 1 and 4, and that's what we're bringing forward at the current time. But we do hope to bring forward measures to the east of the High Street very soon as part of Tranche 2 funding, and then also look at how we can extend to the south of Kings Heath Centre early next year. Obviously, all of this is dependent on funding being forthcoming and available, but there are promising signs from central government around different programmes, and Kings Heath, as the pilot area, is right at the front of the queue. Just to sort of clarify that we are focusing on those 2 areas to the west of the High Street, with the exception of Poplar Road. We were delivering some other measures in Moseley around School Road, Cambridge Road, and it made sense to deliver Poplar Road alongside that because it's on that same sort of corridor route between Kings Heath and Moseley centres. So that's what we're sort of delivering at the moment, with more to come. So in terms of what it is that we're introducing, say, as well as low traffic neighbourhoods, I guess another term that everyone's been made more and more familiar with is that of modal filters. Modal filters is basically where we put something that restricts motor vehicles whilst allowing passage for people on foot, on bike, on mobility scooters. It can be a full restriction, so like the signs here, no motor vehicles. It can be a no entry or a one-way street, or a banned left-right turn, or it can be a bus gate. There's lots of different ways that can be delivered. The main way we're doing this at the moment is through these modal filters, which are sort of full closure to motor vehicles, delivered with 2 planters and a bollard in between that is lockable, so that emergency service vehicles, waste and refuge collection have a key and have access, but no one else is able to get through there. We are bringing these in the first area at a number of locations off the High Street, on Station Road, Grange Road and Bank Street, on Silver Street, past the point of the Lidl car park, so it's still possible to access that car park from the High Street, and then also on Highbury Road, so that we don't sort of create this new cut through of what sometimes people already do at the moment, of cut that corner, and then also a pedestrianised zone on York Road. And I just wanted to focus in on the York Road measure a little bit more. So this is the plan for the York Road pedestrianised zone. It's the sort of section from the High Street down to the junction at Waterloo Road, sorry. And it's delivered in 3 sections. So the 2 sections at either end are pedestrian zone except access. So in terms of accessing this area to make deliveries, to access the slip road that comes around the back here and the sort of car park there, and also for the loading bay here. These areas remain accessible at all times. There'll be no physical barrier at these points. So in terms of accessing premises here and also anywhere else people need to get to, including for deliveries within sort of loading restrictions that apply, then that's accessible. What we are creating is a pedestrianised zone, sort of fully pedestrianised zone, in this sort of 50 metres or so in the centre of this area. And the way that will be delivered would be with the planters and then lockable bollards at these 2 points. I think one thing we'd like to do over the next week or 2 is explore what some of the access and delivery requirements are in this area, and we have been having conversations, and my colleague Aoife will have spoken to some of you about this, because it is possible for these bollards to open and close as required to allow for deliveries in this area if that is required at certain times. But I think it's trying to agree the best possible times for that to happen, so that this space can also be repurposed in other ways, and potentially used for outdoor seating, for event space, Obviously, at the moment, that all needs to be done within current restrictions and social distancing requirements, but there is a lot of potential, and we've seen in other parts of the city and other parts of the country, these type of pedestrianisation schemes can be really beneficial for a local area and for local businesses. And then the second area that we're delivering measures at the current time is the area between Vicarage Road and Howard Road, where we have similar modal filters going in on Colmore Road, Hazelhurst Road and All Saints Road. What we have done here is we've shortened the one-way restriction so that this section here is now two-way, and vehicles coming out from Sainsbury's and the delivery area there can come back out at the top of All Saints, turn onto Vicarage Road and travel in both directions. In terms of how we're doing this, I think it is quite different to how schemes have previously been delivered, partly because of the current climate and the situation we're in, partly because of the funding criteria, but also because I think this is a sort of a good way to test out quite sort of new, different, innovative approaches. So I think some of the things we're doing here is almost sort of like non-traditional or non-standard to your sort of traditional highways approach. It is being delivered as a temporary trial, and it's right that we test and learn these things and work with businesses, residents, community organisations around how this is delivered. We've got a bit of a phased approach to how we're putting stuff in place. We are making some very quick temporary changes to streets, and you will have seen some of this popping up in the area over the last couple of weeks. What we then look to do is explore how we can start to use that street space differently, and over the next few weeks the council and some of our delivery partners will be out and about and talking to people around the opportunities this presents in terms of planting, some of the planters, public realm opportunities, and then as we move on sort of towards the end of the pilot, there is the opportunity for some of these changes to be made more permanent if that is what people want to see, if it's successful, if it's popular. And just to give you a bit of a visualization of what that might look like, those sort of three stages is in the first case, as we did the last week or two with plastic barriers, making those quick temporary changes, but then moving towards something that's a little bit more permanent, sort of semi-permanent, that enables people to use the space differently. So this is what we're just in the process of completing over the next week or so. And then in sort of 6 months time, 12 months time, as we come to the end of the trial, we'll consult with people about whether they want to see stuff made more permanent. And this is the way that we are ultimately able to hopefully really sort of transform residential areas and local centres. So I mentioned that it has been a little bit challenging to engage in the sort of standard way in terms of having lots of public meetings, drop-in events, but we have tried to reach out as much as we can, and one way in which we've done that is through our Commonplace site, as well as still receiving emails through Birmingham Connected and responding to inquiries and following up there. And I think through that Commonplace site we have seen a very good sort of a response rate in terms of numbers at least, and we've had almost 2,000 comments on that site now, which by standard council consultations is a pretty good figure. That's not necessarily almost 2,000 people, because some people are able to make more than one comment. That's absolutely fine. We encourage people to make more than one comment if they've got more than one thing to say, and some of those may be positive, some of those may be negative. So this is just one way of looking at that. We can break it down by different filters, and as you see here, one way we can break it down is comments from people who've indicated that they own a business. What's quite good to see is that the responses are fairly similar across all respondents and those who own a business, only sort of slight differences in terms of most people or the majority of people are towards the positive, mostly positive side, about 60% in total, 55% of business owners. A small number in the middle who are fairly neutral, and that might be wait and see how it works, hold the powder dry and comment later on. And then there are some people who are more negative about what we're doing, have concerns, are a bit sceptical. So I think sort of moving towards 39% of business owners, 31% of people overall. This does sort of change all the time. We do look at the commonplace responses quite regularly. We get weekly downloads, and we can sort of filter that by all sorts of means. So the other thing that people are able to do this is leave comments, which people can then respond to, like. Just to sort of share a few comments from business owners from both sides of the scale, as it were. There have been some sort of very positive comments around what's proposed here, commenting on what we saw at the start of lockdown, April, May, when there was a massive reduction in traffic, and how quiet the streets were and how pleasant it was for people getting around. Acknowledging some of the issues we have with emissions and air pollution that comes from high volume of traffic, and also one comment here about York Road in particular, as the opportunity for sort of pedestrianising this to make it a real sort of destination space, and really benefiting the area. As I say, there are the other side of the coin on that in terms of some comments, concerns, issues that people have. A couple of comments here that are really sort of concerned about a negative impact on local businesses, that it might deter people from coming, particularly by car. If they've got nowhere to park, they may sort of go elsewhere. These are comments that we got where we looked at pedestrianising New Street and Sutton Coldfields, so it is a sort of a common response, and it is a genuine concern. We do need to sort of look at how we provide the right level of access to parking. One comment around how it's making some journeys a bit longer, and that is one of the consequences of this scheme. So at the moment there might be a sort of short half-mile journey that does go now have to take a more circuitous route, and that longer journey potentially is producing more pollution. I think it's also looking at the overall impact and what's offsetting that. And then also someone sort of saying that obviously we know not everyone can walk and cycle. We don't expect everyone to walk and cycle, but we do need to make sure that there is sufficient parking and the access required to support the high street and local businesses across Kings Heath. So just to finish off before we move on to questions and comments, in terms of where we're at now, as people will be aware, we are currently implementing this first set of trial measures. I think the majority of signs and markings are in now, with the exception of York Road. Planters have been installed across the modal filter locations. In the next week or two, we will look to install bollards to fully complete that and restrict through traffic. What we want to do next now is really sort of try and get out and speak to people about these changes and what opportunities it presents. We do want to organise some sort of pop-up events. It is difficult at the moment because we know we have to sort of keep to social distancing, rule of 6, etc. But it is important that we do speak to people about this and look at how we really maximise the opportunities being presented. I think just to sort of stress that, as I said before, these are temporary trial measures. I understand that there is a lot of sort of cynicism and scepticism about the council introducing something by the back door, and that we bring it in as a trial measure, but it then is there for good. I can genuinely say that that's not the intention here. I mean, we hope a lot of this is successful, but we will sort of learn as we go along and make changes where necessary. So already over the last week or two, myself and your ward councillors have had conversations around a couple of the locations, around shortening some of the double yellow line sections, around reviewing the one-way section on All Saints Road and what needs to be delivered there, and also looking at a couple of the modal filter locations, including Grange Road. So we are reviewing this. We will make changes where those are needed, and that is one of the benefits of this approach through an experimental traffic regulation order. However, we do need to sort of acknowledge that change takes a little bit of time to bed in, and what we need to do really is get some of these measures in and give it a few weeks for people to adapt and adjust, to find new routes, to make changes to how people get around, and then really sort of look at what we feel the impact has been. We're starting off sort of saying that we're looking at this as a 6-month trial, so I think we're sort of committed to that time scale, but towards the end of that 6 months, we'll start that review and get feedback and have discussions around what happens next. The maximum length of time something can stay in place through an experimental traffic regulation order is 18 months. But at the end of that 18 months, if it hasn't been made permanent through formal consultation and a permanent order, then it has to come out. So we'd have to sort of start that after a year or so. But at this stage, it is a 6-month pilot, and it's quite exciting in some ways to sort of try making changes to streets in a slightly different way, and to really involve local people, businesses, stakeholders in that process. And then finally, I'm hoping very much that in the next week or so we will get notification from central government about the next phase of funding, and then what we want to do with that is look at some of the other parts of Kings Heath, particularly to the east of the High Street, and what might be needed there, but also start to have some conversations around how's it working, is it something people want to see continue, what needs to change, and where do we go from there. I'm going to pause for a moment and hand back to Councillor Trickett for any sort of further comments, and then we'll have a bit of a question and answer session, and I do have a slide from some of the issues and questions that have been raised with us to date, but I'm just going to pause for a moment and hand back to Councillor Trickett.
Okay, thank you for that, Joe, and thank you for all the comments and questions. Can I also welcome my fellow councillor Mike Leddy, who I don't think I'd quite been let in the room at the point that I kicked off, and Mike is here tonight again to very much hear from the comments that are being put on the question and answer session, and again very much to show that our commitment as 2 local councillors is to work with all of our communities, and that is the business community as well as clearly a very important community that is the community of place which we are elected to represent. And I think that is quite an important thing that we actually understand. We need to be able to respond to the needs of residents as well as the needs of business, and everything in this is going to be a balance. And what we do know, business certainly don't need me to tell you how tough things are at the moment in terms of retail is changing. It was changing before COVID. Internet shopping was taking over more and more. But since COVID, we're obviously seeing a real challenge to many of our businesses, hospitality sector in particular, but equally a range of other businesses, particularly those with smaller shops where the social distancing measures cause problems, are having to make significant changes. And again, what we want to do in Kings Heath is to try and create a new retail offer, a new environment where actually people see it as the place they will go to shop, that it is in our locality. Most people who come to Kings Heath from the neighbourhoods around are in walking distance. It is faster to walk than to drive under past measures. What we also need to be really aware of is the other challenges that we face. A number of you are well aware and have commented already about the issue of air quality. Air quality is a particular issue in Kings Heath because of the canyon effect, and that just the very built environment means that we have major pressures in terms of the quality of the air, and clearly the taking out of the parking spaces on the high street were part of that. Equally, what we know over the next 3 to 5 years, as a council and as a country, we are absolutely going to be required to make changes to respond to the threats of climate change. COVID has been one immediate threat. We are now under the much broader threat of climate change. For Birmingham, that does simply mean taking cars off the road. So we have to look at how can we make our shopping areas, our retail offer, our hospitality offer, something where it is not totally dependent on people jumping in a car and getting there. Because if we maintain it to be purely car dependent, it will not survive the next 5-10 years. So in bringing forward the LTN, we are very much building on the demands and comments of residents. Residents have been at the forefront of driving the concerns about air quality, about driving the concerns about the quality of the lived experience in our area. Equally, what our residents tell us is they treasure the independent businesses in Kings Heath. They treasure being part of a much broader community, and very much what we are trying to do through this process is to actually engage in real time. We know there's going to be conflict. We know not everyone is of the same opinion. Most people will know that my opinion, I'm very strongly in favour of measures that reduce the amount of traffic on roads. But I know everyone's not there at the same point as me and don't have that view. We have to find ways that we can all constructively put forward our different views and work through what does it mean, and work through the what does it mean with the absolute ambition of making Kings Heath a prosperous, livable neighbourhood to live, play and work. And that is seriously what we're trying to do. And again, as Joe emphasised, and I'm sure Mike comes in at the end, he will emphasise as well, we are very clear this is a test and learn, and that where we start off may be very different to where we end up. And we are already picking up on some of the small things that are already being flagged up by making this up. So I do ask you to work with us and to work these through. We will work with the bid. We will be working with different residents groups. We will be bringing in resources. EFOR spent, I think, most of this week on the phone to businesses. So we are listening and we want to hear your views. It's only by hearing everyone's views can we actually start to shape the policy and get it right. So there's no hidden agenda. It's a very open agenda that we all come from different viewpoints, but the end game is to improve the quality of life and to ensure that Kings Heath is a prosperous place. What I'll do is I'll refer back to Joe now to go through some of the questions that have previously been raised. My review of the questions in the section is that most of those have been answered, but let me review those again, Joe. If you go through what's already been raised, and I'll come back after that with any other additional points. And then if I ask Mike if you conclude the evening for us at the end.
Okay.
So we tried to do a bit of a summary of some of the sort of key issues and questions that have been raised with us to date, as I say, through some of the online engagement, also from our email inbox, some of Aoife's phone conversations over the past week or two. And I think this is a bit of a sort of a summary of some of the main things that have come up. I'm happy to add more things into this if colleagues want to share anything from the meeting chat that we haven't addressed either through this or through the presentation, but just to sort of run through some of these points quickly. I mean, I think first and foremost, I know a lot of people are concerned about a lack of consultation, not enough communication, wanting more engagement, and I think we have to hold our hands up that it has been really, really difficult around that. I don't want to sit here and just make excuses, but the timescale that we had and the restrictions in place did create challenges here. But I think we've all been sort of clear that there's a genuine commitment to this from everyone involved with the project, and also it's almost a slightly different approach with the experimental orders, is that the consultation happens during rather than before. This is a live trial, and the first 6 months of that ETRO serves as a formal consultation period where anyone can submit comments, objections, that'll all get taken into account, and the traffic regulation order will be published like that and make that clear to everyone. We've tried to do what we can in terms of sharing information online through the contacts and networks we have, including Kings Heath Bid. I mean, I've been out a couple of times in the past week or two. We'll continue to be sort of So we are sort of really trying to get out as much as we can. We do want to engage, and we'll try to sort of set up as much as we can over the next few months while this trial is in place to ensure that happens. We have also done 2 letter drops to the whole sort of area affected, so hopefully some people have seen that information, and that would have explained how to find out more, how to get in touch. But if people haven't had that, then I say we're being sort of very clear today that you can contact us at the connected email address. You can find all of the plans, all of the information on the Commonplace website. I think completely understandably, people are concerned about the impact this will have on businesses, especially given that we're all in a really sort of challenging, difficult time at the moment. And I know sort of like hospitality sector in particular is really sort of facing some difficulties across the board. That there's all sorts of issues that we're having to grasp with. One of the reasons for introducing this scheme is hopefully to benefit the local centre, the Kings Heath area and businesses. We want to see more people visiting Kings Heath. We want to see increased footfall. We want to see greater dwell time, and also we want to see, through the sort of pedestrian pound, people visiting on foot, spending more and staying longer. I think some of the specific issues we've had is around access to car parks. What we've tried to do with the design of all measures is maintain access to most of the off-street car parks from the high street. So the modal filter on Silver Street is set up so that it's still possible to access the Lidl car park that way. Likewise with Poplar Road, you can still get into the back of the supermarket car park there. In terms of delivery requirements, I think what's the case in most instances is the majority of people will still be able to receive deliveries as at present, but there have been some changes to some of the access routes. So certainly for some businesses off the high street, it might be that delivery vehicles need to access from a slightly different route. We're happy to speak to people individually around that. With York Road, we are looking at the best way of accommodating delivery requirements and speaking to businesses about that. I think customer parking, that there has been a slight loss of parking around some of the modal filters because of the need to ensure vehicles can turn at those points, and also with the current changes on the high street. But what we are looking to do is sort of look at the overall parking provision across Kings Heath, how we make people aware of what is available, and make sure people are aware of that. Likewise, obviously, it's fine to park a few minutes away and walk for most instances, but if you are collecting bulky items, then obviously that's not a possibility. So how we accommodate that, all of these things have been factored in to the design, but also it will be monitored very closely during the trial. A lot of people want to know how waste collection will work, and also if emergency services require access. The way the modal filters are being delivered will use lockable bollards that those people will have a universal key for. So in terms of waste collection, that they'll be able to follow the standard routes and pass through the modal filters. Emergency services will have a key if they need to get access at any point, although generally what we find is it's quicker for them to respond via an alternate route, and not have to get out and open a gate and go through there. So what we are doing with the emergency services is making sure they have details of all the road closures, their sat-nav systems can be updated, so that's fine. But they do have access through those points if they need them. And also, if at any point there is a need for traffic to pass through those points, so say there's an incident on the high street and you need almost like that release valve through Silver Street, then the emergency services would be able to open that up and direct traffic through in the odd occasion that might be required. Quite a few comments from across the board around potential traffic displacement, and are we just sort of sending all the current traffic onto the high street, onto some of the bordering roads like Vicarage Road, etc. As I mentioned in the presentation, I mean, what we're not looking to just move the traffic around here. We are looking for traffic reduction, encouraging walking and cycling for local trips, trying to encourage people to reroute for some of the longer, more strategic routes. So hopefully over time we will sort of see that actually that isn't the case, that we're just moving the traffic onto the main roads, although some of the measures should also help with improving flow. So on Kings Heath High Street, having less turning manoeuvres, people coming on and off at some of those points, should also help to improve traffic flow. There's been a lot of sort of specific issues, and it's probably not time or appropriate to go into all of these individually, but we have taken all of these into account in terms of what advanced signage is needed, ensuring adequate space for vehicles to turn at the modal filters, providing information on alternative routes that are available, making some changes to one-way sections so that people aren't almost sort of trapped at the bottom of a modal filter on a one-way street, similar changes to no exit signs, and also looking at some of the existing band turns. So we have made some changes to that top end of All Saints Road, and we are reviewing the current band right turn onto the high street from Vicarage Road. That's currently being clarified.
Okay.
Go on.
Have you? Sorry, are you almost? I'm conscious of the time. Just I've got a couple of points to come back to from.
Yeah, I mean, I was pausing there because the last couple are more sort of general, so I'm the best time for any other comments from either questions in the chat that we've missed, or anything anyone else hosting wants to flag or comment, and then just sort of finish with a little bit of information in terms of how we're monitoring this, and also the fact that low traffic neighbourhoods are not going to solve all issues. So does anyone else want to sort of come in now, give my voice a rest, and we'll close off with those last couple of points.
I think there's a couple of quite important things to just emphasize, that there are many businesses who are in favor of this as much as there are businesses who are against it. There are issues that we know we all need to change, and we know that we need to make Kings Heath a more livable place. We appreciate from some of the comments that some people feel aggrieved. I think what we need to look at is having that constructive dialogue as to what would it take for you to come along with us on this one? What would you want? I think it's, you know, we can play tennis with each other and make accusation and counter accusation, or we can work through this process. And very much we have engaged with the businesses. I'm out talking to businesses again tomorrow morning. Mike and I have already picked up on issues with double yellow lines and addressed that. We are here to make this work for everyone. So what I really, really do urge people to do is to have the constructive conversation. What I will also say is we are very mindful of things like disabled access, access for ambulances. There is nothing in any of these proposals that actually mean that ambulances would not be able to get to people on York Road, that people in wheelchairs would not actually, would be better served through these proposals because of where they could park next to the planters. So we are trying to work it through. We know we won't get everything right, but that's the point. This is going to take us all working through this together. Mike, did you want to add anything?
Well, just simply the fact that both you and me are politicians. We've been around the Wrekin a few times. Well, I have, most definitely. We're here to make Kings Heath a destination for everyone, not just the local residents. We want them to come and use Kings Heath. I've been shopping on Kings Heath. I've just been racking my brains. I first started buying stuff on Kings Heath High Street 55 years ago. So I've seen it change over the years, and we want it to be a destination of choice itself. We're here to work with not just the businesses. This is a business only forum, but also with the residents as well. And because we are experienced politicians, we're not going to do anything that's going to put or risk our positions. So we're here to work with everyone, and I'll leave it at that, Lisa.
Thank you, Mike. And again, what I really would say that, you know, if you have a concern, please do raise it with us. But please also don't accuse us of lying, don't accuse us of deceit. We are trying to work with you on this. And what we will do is we will have constructive dialogue and constructive engagement. That is the way forward. That is how this could happen. It is up to businesses to help shape this process. But to be part of shaping the process, then there is a need to conduct ourselves in a way that we can all work together. So I get people feel aggrieved. I get people want to let off a bit of steam. That's fine. But tonight is a briefing. What I would like to suggest is that we draw a line. We've picked up on, I know Kings Heath Pet Shop saying that businesses nobody been in touch with them. We will pick up on that directly. We will pick up with anyone else who comes to us, and businesses. Letters have gone out, and this is the start of an engagement. And please believe me, I've spent most of today, and I'm sure E4 spent most of this week, not talking to businesses who just fall this. And there is no such thing as favoured businesses. All the businesses in Kings Heath are important to us because the local economy is what actually serves our local community. So we absolutely want to see our local economy thrive. Joe, is there anything you wish to add?
Lisa, before you move to Joe, can you put the last page up on your presentation? Because it's got the contact details, and when you finish speaking, and leave it there so that anyone can jot down the website or the email address. Thanks.
And
thank you.
Just to also emphasise, you can contact us directly through that. We will also be engaging with the Business Improvement District, Residents Forum, and directly through various street groups and various other things. So there is ample opportunity to engage, and please do come back to us. Joe, anything else from you, love?
So I'll just summarise very quickly with a couple of last points from that issues question slide. Before that, as well as contacting us through all of these means, if anyone would like a copy of this presentation and a link to the recording, if you can put your email address into the chat Q&A. We won't publish it, so it won't be shared with anyone, but it means that we can send that to you directly. If not, that's absolutely fine. Otherwise, we'll just be disseminating it through the bid and online. But if people would like information sent to them directly, please give us your email address through the meeting chat. Yeah, the last couple of points, I guess, from that slide were just this is a trial, and we will be monitoring and observing it very closely. We'll be doing all sorts of things to enable that to happen. So looking at the existing traffic counts, air quality sensors and everything that we have available to us, arranging for some additional measures to be taken, also going out and doing site visits and observations and recording that. But one of the main ways that we will sort of evaluate this over the next few months is through stakeholder feedback. So comments through the Commonplace site. We will be looking to do a household survey. I'm very open to doing a business survey and working with Kings Heath Bid to arrange for people to feedback on that. as well as the formal consultation. So there will be lots of opportunities to monitor this scheme and for people to feed in their views on that, and any information and data from that will be shared through reports. And then finally, just to sort of summarise, I guess, in that low traffic neighbourhoods are a part of the picture, but they are not the picture in itself, and it's not the only thing that we're doing. And I think one of the things that we've noticed from a lot of the comments is there are all sorts of issues at the moment. We're far from a perfect situation as it is where it comes to transport, and people are commenting that over the last few weeks there are issues with congestion and volume of traffic, with speeding, with parking, with air pollution from vehicles, with lack of cycle provision, with antisocial cycling on pavements. So there are a whole myriad of issues that need addressing, and low traffic neighbourhoods are part of that, but that needs to be delivered alongside everything else that the council and our partners are doing in terms of providing safer walking and cycling routes, 20-mile-per-hour limits, supporting the journey to school, improving public transport provision, making Kings Heath bus services more reliable and accessible, opening up the Camp Hill line and getting the stations back in use. All of this comes together and contributes towards the change that we're looking to bring about, and through that hopefully create the thriving, vibrant local centres that we want to see across the city, and particularly in Kings Heath. So I just want to sort of stress that this is part of a much bigger picture, but it is around supporting the change that we want to see, and we're fully committed to working with yourselves to bring that about. So I'm going to leave it there and just let Councillor Trickett or Leddy finish us off with any closing remarks. Thank you very much for your time. Please do keep in touch, and I'm sure we'll be speaking to a lot of you quite a lot over the next few months.
Okay, so can I thank Joe for all his work that he is putting into this? Can I thank Heath for making contact with the numerous businesses throughout Kings Heath, and in particular those on York Road, and we'll produce a summary of the conversations that we've already had with businesses on York Road so far. And can I thank my colleague Councillor Leddy and also Rebecca for organising this. And finally, can I thank the businesses who've taken part in tonight's call. I appreciate time is precious for us all, and I thank you for taking the time to raise your concerns, and I hope we can move forward constructively. Again, as Mike has pointed out, there's the emails connected@birmingham.gov.uk. Please do send in any comments, any queries, any compliments, and we will greatly receive them all. Many thanks, everyone. Have a safe, good evening. Thank you.